But let's keep moving down the news purge, my friends. We're to geopolitics. And in addition to the 1013 UFO PSYOP, that was the day the Chilean miners were finally rescued. Now, the first thing I'll say is that it is an amazing story, and everybody loves a developing soap opera they can tune into. So while I'm happy for them, it just also kind of makes me sad knowing that all the guys in my home state of West Virginia never seem to be so lucky. But leave it to vigilantcitizen.com to break it down for you. Masonic imagery surrounds the 33 Chilean miners' rescue. Now, as this story was spilling out on 1013, I, of course, noticed immediately the 33. The rescue of the 33 unfortunate Chilean miners definitely turned into an international media event. All aspects of the rescue were carefully staged to make the entire thing a spectacular show, inspiring emotions, admiration, and national pride. But for those knowledgeable of Masonic and occult symbolism, it's hard not to ponder on the numerological and symbolic facts of the event, such as the number of miners, 33, great importance in Freemasonry and Kabbalistic system of numbers. Getting into the Masonic lore, the date of the event, of course, was 10/13/10, which, of course, adds up to 33. The Phoenix was the name of the device that they put down into the chamber, so that again and again, Phoenix rose from the ashes. The number of days it took to drill the hole, 33. The first note sent by the miners was 33 characters in length. And the symbolism of the event, to summarize the rescue event, 33 miners trapped for 69 days in the depths and darkness of the underground were lifted one by one on 10/13/10 into a device called Phoenix, a creature representative of occult initiation to the light of day. As they say, ex tenebris lux, from darkness to light. So, we have to ask, with these facts in mind, was the Chilean miners' rescue another Masonic mega ritual? These are the kind of stories that I do find fascinating, but I tend to tread lightly when it comes to MediaMonarchy.com. The media and the memes and the symbols, the semiotics, the semantics, all of it is fascinating in this media stew. However, people want to cast a hateful eye towards crazy conspiracy theorist blogs. So you don't want to turn people off. You don't want to give people an excuse to poke fun at you. I've had people say, oh, you got that crazy Clyde Lewis alien shit on your website. You're discrediting yourself. But not because someone said that. But I think, as I've said before, if I can't get folks to realize that our money is fake and our food is poison, hitting you with crazy Masonic imagery and Kabbalistic number systems may not do it. Fascinating nonetheless, my friends. Another great piece from vigilantcitizen.com. John Pilger has a piece posted up on globalresearch.ca about Chile's ghosts not being rescued. Unbelievably, and again, we're into geopolitics, so we're flying around the world, Israeli cabinet approves loyalty oath for new citizens as the corrupt nation of Israel starts to act more and more like their famed historic nemesis, the Nazis. You can get more on that from CNN. An interesting video sent by a listener. It's a whistleblower statement on Saakashvili and Georgia-connected black ops. That video is there for you to check out and do some research on the gentleman's name that he's referring to running black ops as part of Saakashvili's regime. Of course, the proxy state the U.S. used to attack their mortal enemy, the Soviets. But let's hop over to Greece very quickly and shortly. where the police used tear gas to clear workers from a protest in the Acropolis.
Stocks are pointing to a flat open today on persistent worries about whether a Greek debt crisis will now spread across Europe. Simon Constable, host of the News Hub web show on wallstreetjournal.com, joins me now with more on the markets and the rest of the day's business news. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Mike.
All right, so what is the latest from Greece and where their debt crisis is now turning deadly, in fact, right?
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. 3 people died yesterday caused by fires. There was an awful picture on the front of a newspaper of a policeman engulfed in flames. I think that policeman ended up being okay, but 3 other people died on this. And it's all to do with the austerity measures that the Greek government is trying to impose on Greece so that it can get its fiscal state back in order. And the worry is, of course, not so much Greece, is that this spreads out throughout the rest of the Eurozone, or Euroland, as I like to call it.
Why are investors here so concerned with what happens in Greece and in Spain and even Portugal?
Yeah, the so-called pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain, they're all sort of fiscally unbalanced at the moment. The big worry is really twofold. One is Europe is a very important trading bloc with the US. And if Europe sort of implodes economically, that would be bad for the US, it would be bad for US exports. The other thing that's pretty bad is that investors have bought some of this Greek debt and Spanish debt and all that sort of stuff, and even if it isn't held by US banks, US banks might hold shares or debt of other banks that hold this. And we learned from Lehman Brothers that the financial system is very interconnected. So something that happens in Greece has a very quick route to affecting New York and then the whole of the US. And it could be a repeat. Is the worry? It could be a repeat of the Lehman Brothers situation where financial markets just froze up and you couldn't borrow anything.
That kind of sounds like the frozen banking holiday that could result very quickly here in the States, as again, the panic will spread worldwide. Our last geopolitical note also contains, of course, the controlled demolition, the new financial world order. Put quite simply, Tarpley.net notes that there is a currency war.
And while developing economies seem to be gaining ground in this global economy, how are they doing in these long-standing established international institutions like the International Monetary Fund? And will they ever get a fair say in what happens there? We've also talked about the quote-unquote currency wars here on RT today, but will the world economy ever really move away from the dollar as the currency reserve? Well, joining me to help answer those questions is investigative journalist Webster Tarpley. So Webster, I know you have a lot of opinions on the currency wars, as I guess we could call them, but it seems like, American political leaders are so quick to point their fingers at China for all of the United States' economic problems. Why is that?
I think the basic thing is that there's a wave of protectionism mounting in the 187 countries of the IMF as they come together here this week. Protectionism in the form of managing your own currency, but also managing your own currency using capital controls and exchange controls, and things that violate the tenets of the Washington Consensus, which is globalization, floating rates, and the absolute supremacy of speculation and hot money across the world. Now, the currency wars are not new. The US and the British, for the past 12 months, have been trying to destroy the euro. They have failed. They've also been trying to drive the Chinese currency up so that the Chinese would have to shut down their export factories, create chaos socially, politically inside China, and maybe stage a color revolution against Beijing. That's also not working. The currency war has been going on. Now other people are beginning to fight back. And the way that this is happening is, as the US dollar goes down, which it's been doing now again for the last couple of months, China goes with it. China has not decoupled from the US dollar. As a matter of fact, they've got a grip on the US dollar. So as the dollar goes down, China follows. Now that puts the pressure on Japan, Korea, and others. And September 15th, the Japanese surprised everybody in the world by doing a unilateral intervention to keep the yen down so that they wouldn't be pricing themselves out of the world market. And the big question is now, who's going to follow? The Brazilian finance minister, Manteiga, said there's a currency war. The Brazilians are fighting the speculators with a 4% tax on people who come in and buy bonds. And it's thought that Thailand may soon take the lead in imposing actual capital controls, exchange controls. We should look back to the Asian contagion crisis of about 10 years ago. The country that fared best was Malaysia under Mahathir Mohamad. And the way they did that was capital controls, exchange controls. Now, when Strauss-Kahn of the IMF or Zolik of the World Bank look at those measures, They see the death knell to this globalized floating rate hot money system. That's why they're screaming catastrophe, beggar my neighbor, the end of the world, and all this other stuff.
I was just about to ask, this must be something that the International Monetary Fund is concerned with, and we've talked so much on RT today about how these developing countries are kind of gaining ground, as you mentioned, China, India, Brazil. But when it comes to the IMF, it seems like they don't have a lot of power. How can that be?
Well, it's because the U.S. Has the controlling share, right? 17% of the stock is owned by the U.S., and that's the votes, and along with some others, some Europeans, the British, and so forth, the U.S. manages to dominate. But I don't think anymore. The BRIC countries, as you mentioned, is a center of resistance to this diktat of the U.S. But the big thing is you're dealing with a system. You're not just dealing with the U.S. You've got globalization as a system. What are you going to do about it? One thing is fight those speculative flows. You can see George Soros is very worried about that in his editorial in the Financial Times. But the other thing is floating rates themselves are bad. They don't work. Under Bretton Woods, up until 1971, things were better. Why not go back to that? Why not take the peg of the Chinese to the U.S. as an island of stability, and other people could also relate to that? You could restore a system of fixed parities so that you'd have some certainty what the values of currency would be looking down the road. And again, the U.S. is the biggest enemy of this, and the British along with them. But for other countries, it would be beneficial. In other words, if you want to be like China, do what the Chinese do. What do? They block capital flows into China. They're very strict on capital controls coming into China. You can't just go and speculate in China. And they make sure that they know what their currency is going to be worth 6, 12 months down the road.